And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 12. To all you new listeners out there, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a freelance photographer from Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey, and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. In today's episode, I want to give you 5 reasons why you should start things before you are ready. Most of us tend to overthink big decisions in life and often live in fear of what could happen rather than just starting and seeing where it can take you. I want to draw on my own experiences of being super afraid to start new things and then show you what it's like on the other side when you finally do start. The short answer, you'll never be ready, so what are you waiting for? But before I jump into today's topic, I want to take some time to talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And if I'm being honest, the past week has been quite a lot of probably overthinking on my part, because I think I am starting to get to the point where the fact that I'm shooting my first wedding in under 4 weeks has just dawned on me. And I think all of those insecurities are starting to come out and come through in my own thinking and my own thought processes as we move into that in the coming weeks. And I think it's part of the fact that it's just the unknown. I think for me, it's that thing of I don't really know what I'm even going to be doing. I've been trying to tell myself that it'll all be okay and it'll all work out, and I have the skills that I'm able to do the job properly, and I'm able to do everything that is asked of me and exceed that. I guess I think that as a photographer, I'm capable of producing great work, and I'm not in any doubt of that. But part of the fact of the stress that comes into it is just the unknown of anything that could happen on the day and not being prepared for any number of scenarios. One of the big things that keeps running through my head is the fact that I've never actually been to a wedding before. So that in itself, I think, is a big factor of playing on my mind, because I don't really know what the day is going to be like. But then I have to keep reminding myself that every day is unique anyway, and so the fact that I haven't been to one doesn't mean that anything. Like if I had have been to one, that doesn't mean that I'd be more prepared for the next one, because this could be something completely off track to what I've been to before, you know? So I had to sort of be okay with that, and I'm trying to come to terms with it, but I think it still does weigh heavy on my mind, and it still is going to up until the day, and even after the fact. I don't think at any point it ever gets easier. And so I have to be okay with that and just sort of live in that state, I guess, because if I'm not comfortable with it, and if I haven't come to terms with the fact that it is going to be uncomfortable, I think it's just going to stress me out even more. So I think just accepting that I'm not 100% prepared, but I don't think I can ever be 100% prepared, and I think that is so important in that realization. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm super confident walking in, because there is so much unknown, and for me that has been something that I do like to keep a lot in my control. And so having so much out of my control and so much that hasn't been organized as yet really does stress me out. But I know that walking in on the day, I can produce great results that I'm happy with, and it does alleviate some stress, as I said, that I am shooting the wedding for free. So that sort of alleviates a lot of the stress of people not having too high of expectations, but also not expecting outstanding work, because that's not what they wanted anyway. There was no sort of style brief that I needed to match. So I'm super excited to be finally going and taking photos of my first wedding. But these are just some of the nerves I think that I've been feeling over the past week that have started to become more real to me, and things are starting to really move up into the right direction, and a lot of things like that. I've been struggling, I guess, with trying to tell myself that I have all the equipment that I need, because it's one of those things that can help, I guess, in a way, mask some of the insecurities or the anxiety around things that could go wrong, and things that I can do to protect myself in that is to have excess equipment. And one of the things that I keep telling myself is that I don't need like 6 backups of everything. I don't need alternatives in case every piece of equipment does break, because the chances of that happening are very slim. So I'm just trying to justify that to myself and not overcommit, and not throw myself into a point where I walk in with bloody 10 kilos of bags just because I think I need all this equipment that I don't end up having to use. So I'm trying to tell myself that, but also I'm in the process of trying to work out what equipment I actually do need, because it's never been something that I've done before, and I don't want to walk in and have to get there and not have something that I do actually need, and then look stupid because I don't have something that everyone else was expecting. But I think I'm starting to come to it, and I think I'm okay with everything I have. I just have to convince myself that I'm going to be okay, and I know how to take a good photo, so that at the end of the day is all that they're after, and they're not after all this fancy equipment that I don't even have anyway. So that has been one of those things that it's just one of those things that always comes up, I think, when starting something new, is always feeling like you don't have the best equipment and don't have all the right equipment, I guess, in a way, because that can sometimes mask those feelings of not being adequate enough in your own ability, that feeling like the more equipment you have or the more expensive the equipment is, that will somehow improve your skill level at some sort of craft. But in actual fact, it's not really going to do anything apart from just make my back hurt at the end of the day from having to carry around all that equipment. So having to tell myself that, but I think we've come to a good point now where I'm trying to not jump into having all the equipment that I won't end up having to need. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we jump into today's topic was a conversation I was having with a friend last week about my working hours. And this really comes back to what I was talking about in episode number 7 about creating habits and routines. In the fact that I've realized that I don't work very well in the morning. And this was something that I was talking about, and something that I've come to over the past probably month or two, trying to start earlier in the morning and trying to start work at like 8:30, even like 9 o'clock. I feel like I'm not getting productive work done in those first couple of hours, and I'm really not trying to do any good work there at all. I've often said that I need something to encourage me, I guess, to start in the morning. I need a routine. I need a sort of a to-do list to start me in the right direction in the morning, because it can be very hard for me to motivate myself to get up and get moving, and I need to get those first few tasks out of the way to sort of create momentum into the day and sort of guide me in the right direction with the work that I need to do for the rest of the day. But that can start at any point, and I've noticed that the earlier I start, the harder it is to get motivated, because I'm not really in a frame of mind, I guess, to start working on things that early in the morning, regardless of whether they are things that I do enjoy or just tasks that I know need to be done. So for me, it's been a process of trying to start at a certain time every day, but I think moving that time further back. So for me, I think my optimal hours, I guess you could say, would be from about 10 a.m. to about 6 p.m. And that is probably my 8 hours with a fair few breaks in between. I don't work straight for 8 hours. That's just unreasonable in any work environment, I think. But for me, I've come to that as being my optimal hours. I don't love to get up first thing in the morning and start working. That's just not the way it ever goes for me, and I never get good work done because, as I've said before, I like to exercise in the morning, and that is one of the things that allows me to have longevity, I guess, within the day's work. And by the time I get to the afternoon, there's no sort of slump, because I do tend to get very tired in the afternoon. I lose energy, I lose motivation if I haven't exercised in the morning, or if I haven't gone out and actually done something with the earlier part of my day. So I think coming to terms with that and coming to that realization that no good work's going to get done in the morning allows me to not procrastinate over those first couple of hours. I was tending to find myself in a position where the first 2 hours of the day I was trying to work, but actually wasn't getting any work done. So there was no point just being at the desk and trying to work when I wasn't actually getting any work done, you know? So I may as well take that time and actually go and do something else that I enjoy, and then come back at a point when I'm actually prepared to start. And if that means extending the work into the evening, or if that means that I don't get all the jobs I need to get done, if I don't get them done that day, then that's okay, because I can push them back to the next day and know that I'm going to be even more motivated to start, because those are things that I can have straight on my to-do list for the next morning, and I don't have to spend the first hour trying to work out what I need to do for the day. But those few hours that I was just spending in the morning where I wasn't really doing any work, I can now spend those on things that, as I said, I enjoy, but also allow me to get more stuff done towards the later half of the day. I don't get exhausted in the afternoon because I haven't I haven't been working since 8 a.m. for one, but I've also already done most of the things that I wanted to do in the day, in the morning. So there's nothing holding me back in the afternoon to think, oh, I've really got to go do that task. I really want to go to the gym. I need to go get some groceries for something to have for dinner tonight and things like that. I don't have those things on my to-do list in the afternoon because I've got them out of the way in the morning. But also working into the afternoon, I find myself having more motivation and more energy to continue on. So that's just one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, because I don't ever want to fall into the trap of just working the hours that everyone else is working. And I find it hard because most of my friends and most of the other people I know work in those hours that I've spoken about. But a lot of the creative people that I am inspired by and admire and am in contact with as well, a lot of those people who I know around me often tend to work in the evenings, and that has never been something that's worked for me either. I've never been someone who likes to stay up late into the night and work really long hours in the day and that sort of stuff. I like to be up early in the mornings. I like to exercise. I think I do get good work done through the day, so I'm in a very lucky position with that I can get work done through the day. But I just think that means not starting as early and not pressuring myself to get to the desk by 8 o'clock and do work. Because if there are things that I've still got to do in my personal life, like if being at the desk by 8 o'clock means compromising on either eating breakfast, exercising, having a shower in the morning, that's just not things that I can compromise on. And I don't want to have to be up even earlier than I already am. So I would rather get those things done and be prepared for the day and be in a good mood to start the day than start my day off on the wrong foot because I'm annoyed that I was out of time in the morning and I was so rushed and I didn't get a chance to eat breakfast, and now I'm off on a bad foot and I can't get any work done for the day. So these are just things that I think that we all should reflect on and all should be able to find time within ourselves to have a long, hard think and sort of work out what your best schedule is, because everyone is unique in this. And I think it's so important that when you can find a structure that works for you, that you have to stick to it. And the only way to find that is to experiment. And I've tried working in the mornings. I've tried working in the evenings. I've tried half days in the morning, in the afternoon, on the weekends even, but everyone works at a different pace. So trying to find that has been something for me. And I think it has been rather successful, and I'm going to continue that on moving forward. But now we are moving on to today's topic, which I'm sure, as you know by you've read the title and heard the intro, is all about starting before you're ready. And this really came about for me. The idea actually came about a long time ago because it's always something that I've been very strong on and something that I've always agreed with. But I think it was important for me to make an episode about this because I want to get some ideas out there, because there have been a lot of things I've heard that have been to the contrary in saying that you probably shouldn't start unless you are 100% ready. And I don't always think that's true. So I wanted to put this episode out there. This week, actually, when I'm recording this episode, has been a year since I started my photography business. And that was something that I had been working on, had been dreaming of, I think, for quite a while. I'd been doing photography just as a hobby for quite a while. But then trying to start it as a business, I think, was another step from that, because there was a lot more pressure, and I just never thought that I was ready to start. I was never in a position where, in my own head, I felt comfortable starting a business, and I never thought that I was good enough to actually put any work out there, and I never thought that I would ever have any clients who would be willing to pay for my services. So that for me was such a daunting thing, and I think now, having a look back on that, I was glad that I did start when I did, because even though I might not have been the most capable photographer, I definitely had skills, and more skills than most. So I've only improved from then, and I've only gotten better over the past year. So I want to use some of that and sort of show you guys that it's able to be done. I did have someone or a few people say to me a few weeks ago when I was releasing my proposal, I guess, to start working as a wedding photographer. And a few people said to me, well, why don't you go and work under someone else? Or why don't you go and become a second photographer for someone else who's more experienced in the industry, and try and be able to gain your own experience in that, and then sort of move up into being your own photographer and starting your own business in that. And I sort of had to push back on that, because there have been times where, yes, I've thought that would be a good route for me, but that has only been because I have often thought it would be the easier route, to be honest, because there is something that comes with that in the ease of not having any responsibility, really just turning up on the day, having to take photos and then hand them all off to someone else, and you never have to deal with anything else on the other end of that. But also, I think it's a trap because I could get stuck in that and become comfortable for a long time and just continue working for someone else and never actually start my own business, even though I probably have the skills just as good as the other person after I'd been working for a while. I would probably just get stuck because I was too reliant and too scared to actually go out there and do something. So I was always under the opinion that I would go out and just try and start by myself. If that meant having to work for free for a while, then that's what it had to be, because I'd rather go and shoot a couple of weddings for free to then start charging money and actually having more control over my own business than shooting the first couple of weddings for a small amount of money, but then continuing to shoot for someone else and work for someone else for a small amount of money and having no control, no sort of freedoms over my own style. And that, I think, would have really hurt me in the long term. So I'm glad that I've come to this now where I am in trying to start my own business and trying to start it by myself, because that has always been the way that has worked for me, and something that I've always known that if I just jump in and just put as much effort into it as I can, then it will work out. And there's a lot more that's in my control this way, I find, even though it is harder and there is a lot that's in my control. Everything that I have to do is in my control. And so that gives me some sort of comfort in knowing that if something goes wrong, then I can be the one to fix it, and it all comes back on me. It's nothing that I can never go put the blame on anyone else. So that was one of the things that I've heard a lot of people say, is that you should work for someone else. But I think that sort of goes against what I was trying to do with this business, and trying to go against what I was trying to do with my whole career. I didn't want to go work in a job where I was working for other people. So working for someone else would have been taking a step in the wrong direction, even though it might have seemed like an easier step to take. I was glad that I didn't take that and sort of went the harder route in a way, but I think will turn out to be the easier route, because as you'll hear with some of these steps, I think in a year or 2 years' time, I'll have a lot of things down pat that other people, having worked for someone else, would not have even experienced before, and then that'll be harder for them to have to jump in from there. So I really just want to say, start before you're ready. Obviously, within some sort of reason. You can't start if you have no skills or no interest in a certain area. There's no point starting there. But I think starting is a term that can be taken in any direction you really want to. You can start wherever. You don't have to start right down the bottom. If you've got some sort of experience, then you're starting higher than someone else. But I think starting in any different direction can be considered starting. So regardless of where I am in my own skills and my own ability, I've never taken photos of a wedding before. So technically I'm starting right at the bottom, but I do have more skills than anyone who has never been a photographer before. So start before you're ready, but also know what is in store as well. I think a big part of the reason that people are scared of starting before they're ready is because it's been so built into us that we need to prepare, and our whole lives have been built on preparation. I mean, like, the whole idea of school is meant to prepare you for things later on in life. I don't know what those things are. I don't know where any of those skills I learned from in high school have meant to help me later on in life. But I think that is the aim of school, the aim of schooling, the aim of childhood, I guess, is to learn things for later in life. Even then when you have to go to university, like, that is learning for a job later on. Like, you're not actually working in that job, you're just learning for a job that you don't yet have. And then even when you move into a job, you can only move into an entry-level job because supposedly you don't have as many skills as the next person up. And so you have to work up in this some sort of hierarchy that has been created. And so this whole cycle of preparation has made people scared that, well, what if they go and do something that they're not prepared for? And is there any chance of actually going to do something they're not scared for? This fear around doing things before you're ready holds people back. It's the fear of failure. It's the fear of looking bad. It's the fear of not being good enough at things that you're going to go and start. It's the fear that other people will see you attempt something and you're not being up to a standard that they have somehow made up in their own head. You know, like, we're scared that if we try something and we then fail at it, and if we look like we are failing, that other people will somehow think worsely of us because we have failed. Whereas most people would be inspired by the fact you've actually started and take inspiration from that and shouldn't look down on you because you have failed, because the idea of failure means that you are then going to grow from that and you've actually learned things from that failure. Well, I would hope that you would learn things from that failure and then can take that into something else, because people who are going to look down on you are never people who are ever going to start something, because they're the people who are held back by their fear. We're always projecting the emotions that we're most scared of ourselves, I think. And so in that way, people are going to judge because they're too scared to try. And if we're being held back by a fear that other people in their head have created for us, then I think that is the wrong way around. And we need to start positioning it in a way that we should be inspired by people by actually trying. And the fact that they're failing may actually be a good thing. And I think it is, in a long sense of way. So I just want to give you today 5 reasons as to why you should start before you're ready. And these are really in no particular order, but they're just things that I have come up with and things that I have been thinking about. And so I think the first step is admitting that you have a problem. And this is actually the first step, but if you are seeking perfection, that simply doesn't exist. And so there's no chance that you're ever going to be perfect. I think for me, one of the things that held me back at the start was thinking that I had to be perfect before I started, or I had to have everything down pat before I started. I had to admit to myself that yes, I am a perfectionist and I need to stop that, because in the end, that's holding me back and that's going to stop me from actually starting, because no one's going to be perfect at the start. And even so, I think starting something, you don't need to be perfect because no one's expecting you to be perfect at the start. You just have to be comfortable in the fact that you are going to grow over time, and anything that you're going to work at, you are going to grow with it. And I've definitely struggled so much in that, but growing has shown me that it's been a great move to just start things before I'm ready, because I learn so much more. You're never going to be ready, and the perfect time doesn't exist. The bar for success will always be higher than where you are now, because that is just the very nature of success. I mean, if you get somewhere, then you're going to want to go higher. And anyone, regardless of where they are in their own life at the moment, is always going to be striving for more. Well, I would hope you would be. And so that bar is always going to be higher than where you are now. And so you can never be at that bar. If you are at the bar, you're not striving to be anywhere. So that is one of the reasons why you're never going to be ready. There's always going to be things out of your control. There's always going to be some unknown. And so preparing one more step isn't going to make you any more prepared, I guess, in a way, because if you had have just started 2 weeks ago, you would be just as prepared as you are now, but you'd also have other things under your belt, and you would also have learnt things that you, by just preparing and by just doing research and by just studying, haven't actually learnt, that someone else who just started has learnt because they've been on the job and actually learnt by actually making mistakes. You can't foresee every obstacle, and so having 5 hurdles is no better than having 10 hurdles in your way, because you'll still get stuck at the first one. So, you may as well start and try to jump that first hurdle, because once you learn to jump that first one, it's so much easier to jump the second one. And then you'll have momentum in your corner, and then that's the way that you start on, and that's the way you get things moving. And that leads into number 2, which is the best way to actually learn things is by actually doing them. I think that mistakes are the best way to learn. I've always said that. I've learnt things that I didn't even know that I even had to know. You will always start early because you don't know what you don't know. There's so much out of your control, and there's so many things that you don't know that you need to know. So regardless of when you start, you're starting early, because if you weren't starting early, you would be okay to just to walk on through, and you wouldn't need to learn anything. And that would just be a very old, sad way to live your life, because you'd never be having any experiences and there'd be nothing in your way. And so you would never have any challenges. And that's just not any sort of way that I want to live. I like to have the challenge. And I think the challenge is what helps us to grow. I think I learned so much more by actually being on the job and actually knowing what it is I need to do, rather than just researching it and thinking about it. And in terms that other people have actually laid out for me, in researching and actually reading things, you're actually only reading from other people's experiences. And as we know, experiences are very unique and can change from time to time. As I said in the start, with me becoming a wedding photographer, every wedding is unique. And so just because I've shot one wedding doesn't mean the next one is just going to be the exact same. There's going to be something different about it. And so if I'm just reading from the experience of one person in one particular area, that doesn't necessarily relate to me. And so I need to just get out there and actually do things and start to learn on the job and learn through experience of my own, because that is the only way that you're ever going to be able to prepare for every and any situation that may come your way. You know, I heard this quote once that said, winning isn't everything, but wanting to win is. And I think that just summed it up so perfectly in the fact that you have to want to actually succeed, but if you don't succeed, that's okay. You've learned something from it. And by wanting to succeed, you'll be prepared for the failures and prepared to learn things from the failures. I think people who don't want to succeed aren't prepared to accept the fact that they have lost and aren't ready to take on board the important lessons that they may learn from actually losing a couple of times in life, you know. And so, yeah, those people aren't actually wanting to win. They're not actually in it for the right reasons. But if you're striving to win or you're striving to succeed in life, then when those hurdles come your way or when those obstacles come, you can be prepared to actually learn things from them, because that, you know, that's the best way to actually grow and actually in the end have success in the long term. And so the third point that I want to touch on is that progress begins with a leap of faith. And I think that is so important, and it's been something that has been the backbone of most of the things that I do. And I like to think of myself as a courageous person. I don't think I always was, but being able to take that jump and being able to take that chance, because I think things do pay off in the long term. Even if it's not in this exact instance, I think there's been many occasions when I've tried something, it hasn't paid off in that particular realm, but later on, I've used those skills and I've used the things that I learned in other areas. And so taking chances will eventually pay off, but it just may not be in the way that you expect them to. And if they do happen to be in the way that you expect them to, then that's great as well. And so I think we have to be prepared to take that leap of faith. I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but even me starting this podcast, I think, was a little bit of a leap of faith, because I don't really know where this is going to go, and I don't know if this is ever going to be something that's sustainable for me, but it was something that I really wanted to do. And so I thought I'll just throw myself into it, because even if this podcast doesn't end up being a major success, I still know that I've learned a lot from creating this podcast, and I've learned a lot in not only how to podcast, but also how to convey messages, how to think about things, how to research things, how to speak about things in a different way than I ever had before. And so if this doesn't pay off in the way that I expected it to, or I didn't expect it to, it will pay off in other areas. And I'm sure that I will get it back in a year's time or 5 years' time when I'm then asked to go do something else, that I can draw upon this experience that I've had now and using that later on. And I think that has been so important in a lot of the things that I've done and a lot of the different avenues that I've gone down, is that starting before I was even ready to start there has led me to learn so much more than I ever would have learnt had I just been researching before I had to go do something. You know, I've done so many different things that now when someone asks me to do one particular thing in a style of photography, I can draw on different experiences that I've had taken because I've done so many different styles. I've diversified myself in that way and sort of opened myself up to so many different options because I was trying to find the one that I liked the most. But along that way, I've collected so many different things that I can now use in the field and in the business that I've now created, because I was open to those experiences and I did jump in. I didn't say that, oh, I'm not ready to start that yet. I don't really need to know how to do that because I'm never going to need to use that. But by jumping in and doing those things, it showed me that I was ready, and it showed me that I had purpose and I had the things that I needed to be able to move forward. And as such, those things are rewarding me back now because I've now got skills and other knowledge that I've gained from those experiences along the way. And I don't think it's only that. I think, as I said before, it's the inspiration drawn from witnessing people taking their own leaps of faith. I think their purpose is revealed through that action. And so people are more likely to be drawn to someone who is out there going to do something out of the simple fact that you're actually doing something and you're enjoying what you love. You know, people are more likely to be drawn to this podcast because they can see that it's something that I enjoy having to do. And I'm really loving being able to do it every week, as opposed to someone who would just be doing it because they think it's a good move in business, or as opposed to someone who thinks that it's just something they have to do for a job, or someone who is just being hired by someone else to go do it as a job and had no experience in it and is now having to go and sort that out and having to learn how to do it. People are going to be drawn more to someone who just throws themselves in the deep end and is really loving what they're doing. In turn, if you're loving what you're doing, then you're more likely to improve and more likely to take things on board and grow more in that business and grow more in those endeavors that you're trying to do in life. And I think that is such an important point, in that it's not just taking that leap of faith. It's that if you're willing to take that leap of faith, it's the mindset behind that shows things to other people as well, that you're actually in it for the right reasons. And I think that leads into the fourth point, which is starting creates forward momentum. And so by the time that you are actually ready to start whatever it is you thought you weren't ready to start, you are already moving. And this is something that I come back to a lot, in the fact that by the time that people actually realize what I'm up to, or by the time that people are actually hearing this podcast, I've already been working at it. Like, I'm up to the 12th episode now, and despite the fact that I may only have about 10 consistent listeners every week, by the time I get to about 50 episodes, if people are starting to realize this podcast, if people are starting to jump on board and actually handing it a chance, because I know in the beginning people aren't going to give it a chance because it's only new. But once they realize that this is actually something that I want to do, and if they decide to actually give an episode a chance, if they listen to the most recent episode, it's going to be 50 times an improvement on the first episode, So having that progress and being able to work on it, that I will be actually ready, that when people are actually ready to absorb the content that I'm actually putting out, my content is going to be improved so much from where it was when it first started. I always thought about this with my landscape photography, in the fact that I was uploading all these photos on Instagram, and I was posting them, and I wasn't happy with the amount of engagement that I had to get. And that has been a whole other mindset shift that I've had to come to in the past 12 months, of not only posting for engagement and posting because I enjoy the work. And I think that in itself brings more happiness and brings more actual people that are interested in my work. But that has been something that I've always been consciously aware of, the fact that I was upset about how no one was actually having a look at my work and no one was seeing my work. But I knew that by the time someone had actually clicked on my profile and went and had a look at my work, that it would be worthy of them actually following along, because it had already been curated to a level that I was happy with. And the level of work was well above where it needed to be for someone of my stature. And I was trying to always be ready in case that moment struck. It's that thing of people thinking that anyone is an overnight success. There's no one that's an overnight success. People have been working for years, but it just happens to be that when one of their photos on Instagram goes viral, that they were prepared for that, and all their work had been good work. If you post one photo and it goes viral, but the rest of your photos are just really bad photos and not interesting at all, then you weren't prepared. You weren't ready to take hold of that audience that had come your way. I think everyone gets their chance, and everyone probably gets a few chances, but if you're not ready to take that chance when it comes, that's a big missed opportunity. And so having enough work and having the preparation and being ready when that moment strikes, I think is so important, and being ready to capitalize on the people that are going to come your way, because the work will come your way, and it will eventually, people will start to see what you're up to. People will start to jump on your bandwagon and see the momentum that you're creating in your business. So if you're not ready, if you don't have things in place to be able to capitalize on that when it comes, then you're so far behind. And this is something that happens when people wait too long to start. They think that, oh, now I'm ready to start. But when people actually come to them and ask for work, or come to them and are interested in something, that they're not actually ready. They haven't put in the amount of hours in the back end to know that they can actually use that to their advantage, and to know that all that work they've done beforehand wasn't just for nothing. Starting and creating forward momentum, I think, is the best way to continue yourself and project yourself long term. Because even if you don't get so much work in the first year, even if you don't get as much traffic, even if you don't get as much business, you don't get as much exposure in the first year, when that does eventually come, if your work is up to a standard, you will continue to have work for a long time, because you will have people who are interested in your work and who are actually following along. And then moving into point number 5, I think, is just one that always goes around, but something that I've always believed in, is that the riskiest thing you can do is to play it safe. And this is a mentality that a lot of people have, in that not wanting to change what they do and not wanting to start new things because they're very comfortable in where they are. Even people who have started things before and have gone through the process before and have been in a successful business and have their own, or been started something and that they really enjoy and been going at it for over 10 years or more, aren't ready to keep up with the times and change into something else that they think they're interested in because they're having too much success where they are. And so this is to all those people who are too scared to actually leave something that they have already started. Like, you may have started a business, but you're too scared to leave that because you don't want to go into something else because you're already making so much money in something at the moment, even though it might not be something you enjoy. Every time I think about this, I always come back to Kodak. You know, the film and camera company that we all know, and who's probably responsible for making every consumer camera before about 1980. They were too scared to change into the digital era, and so stuck with old school film photography for way too long, and let their position as the world's number one producer of all different types of cameras slip because they weren't ready to make the move. They were too comfortable with where they were producing film cameras and producing photographic film, that they let new producers of cameras come into the market and create these digital products and digital cameras that we now know, and steal almost 100% of their market share. And so that is always the prime example that I use of people not being willing to shift and change into things that they think could be viable, or not being open, I think, even to new things that they could even have a chance in. There are so many new things starting today and so many new opportunities that are just within our reach. And if we don't have our eyes open to these new opportunities, we're never going to be able to grab hold of any of them. And just because your business is stable now doesn't mean it's going to be in the next 10 years. And so always trying to keep up with the times and keeping up your skills. I think if I ever get to a point where in business where it becomes easy, I think, or things become stagnant, I know that it's time to start moving and it's time to change. Because if it's becoming easy, then I'm not actually learning anything and I'm probably taking steps backwards. You know, things are constantly evolving, and if I'm thinking it's easy, probably everyone else is thinking it's hard because they're so busy transitioning into the new era. And I don't want to be the one playing it safe where I am. And so if you're on the fence about changing into a new thing or starting something new, just have a think about that and have a think about what is the longevity in that new thing you may be wanting to start. And is there a reason why you're wanting to start it? Because chances are there's going to be a significant reason why you want to start it and why everyone else is starting it at the same time. So don't be scared to just jump in there and do something and actually take a risk, as I said before. So those are the 5 tips that I have on why you should start things before you're ready. First is to admit you have a problem. Number 2 is the best way to learn is by doing. Third is that progress begins with a leap of faith. Number 4 is that starting creates forward momentum. And 5 is the riskiest thing you can do is to play it safe. So remember those 5 things the next time you think about wanting to start something, and draw upon some of the things that I've just said here today and some of the reasons why it has helped me so much in just jumping in and starting things before I'm ready. And I know that a lot of the things that I've started haven't always paid off, but they will pay off in other ways and have given me experience and so much knowledge that I never would have had I have not started. So that is the end of today's episode, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this. It was a bit of a different style for me. I'm trying to diversify the ways that I produce these episodes and the way that I present information to you all. I know I've had a tendency to ramble on in the past, and trying to get my points down has been something that I've been working on a lot more recently, and trying to be more precise and more coherent in the words and the things that I'm saying. And so I hope you did find that. And if you did, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear a bit of feedback on this week's episode because, as I said, it's been something different to me. And last week's was a bit of a shorter episode, but this one I think has gone on quite a long time. I'd love to know what your preference is and what you guys think of the different styles of episodes. I'm going to try and keep changing them up and try to keep them interesting for me and for you guys, and try and keep myself active and keep challenging myself to make episodes that I may not be so aware on, but episodes that I'm also super interested in. And I think that is the best way to keep on learning and keep on growing in this podcast. So, as I said, guys, have a happy week. I hope you had a great long weekend, and I will speak to you all next Monday. Bye.